As the corporate sector evolves, Burka Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Burka Africa. Burka Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Burka's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Burka supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.burkafrica.com for more information.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from different parts of the world. I'm Alexandra Godley, and I will be your host and your moderator for today's session. I'm a counselor and a conflict resolution practitioner, and it is truly a pleasure to welcome you to the African Youth Leadership webinar series, brought to you by Burka Africa, Africa's growth partners. We are living in a time that calls for leaders who are not only capable or able, but leaders that are emotionally intelligent, leaders who are grounded and resilient. Across our continent of Africa and globally, leadership is increasingly being tested in moments of tension, disagreements, and difficult conversations. Today, we focus on a vital leadership skill, navigating difficult conversations and conflict resolution. Whether in a workplace, within your communities, or even in your families, conflict is inevitable. We experience it every day. But what sets apart effective leaders is not the absence of conflict or the fact that leaders don't go through conflict. It is the ability to engage with it with clarity, with respect, with maturity, and with purpose. Today's session is designed to equip you with insights and perspective and on how to approach conflict, not as a barrier, but as a way or even a pathway for growth. Before we begin, I would like us to pause for a minute and personally connect with the topic. I invite you to engage with us in the chat by reflecting on these questions. When you hear the word conflict, what is the first thought that comes to you? And what is the emotion behind that? You can just take a moment to engage with us in the chat. Give yourself the time and the space to really be honest. It can be a response of fear, it could be a response of anger or anxiety, and that's okay. All right, thank you for engaging. I am honored to be joined today by two distinguished leaders whose work sits at the intersection of peace, leadership, and conflict transformation. First, we are joined by Moses Abolade. Moses Abolade is a peace building consultant. He is an educator and a speaker. He is dedicated to strengthening peace education and youth led conflict transformation across Nigeria and West Africa. He serves as the executive director of the Peace Education and Practice Network and is also a consultant with organizations such as Peace Catalyst International. Through initiatives including PEPCON, PMAT, and the Peace Zone Media Platform, Moses bridges local challenges with global peace-building practices. His Peace Zone platform alone has reached over 1 million views, shaping national conversations around peace and civic responsibility. He is the author of the Peace Education for Secondary School manual and a key contributor to several widely adapted peace educational tools. His work also extends into policy spaces with participation in high-level platforms such as the UN, ECOSOC meeting, and African Union dialogues. A recipient of the Rick Love Young Innovators Award and a UCIP Generation Change Fellow, Moses is driven by a clear mission to build people who build peace and create systems for lasting social transformation. Moses, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Godly, for doing a godly work.
Thank you. We are
Yeah.
also joined today by Paul Tom Nyama. Paul serves as the country director of Operation Mobilization Ghana and is a member of the OM International Global Resourcing Steering Committee, as well as the OM Africa Strategic Think Tank Group. He holds two master's degrees in alternative dispute resolution, theology, and missions, in addition to a bachelor's degree in education administration. Paul is a seasoned change initiator, strategic thinker, and holistic leadership development coach. With over 22 years of global cross-cultural experience in transformation, crisis leadership, and organizational growth. His work spans Africa and international contexts, where he is deeply engaged in driving sustainable impact across missions, nonprofit organizations, and executive leadership platforms. Paul, it's truly a pleasure to have you with us today. You are very welcome.
Thank you very much, and it's pleasure being here this morning. Bless
Awesome. Okay, let's get into it. So I'm gonna pose this first question to Moses. What makes a conversation difficult for you and why?
Should I go first? Who is going
Yes,
first?
please. Yes, you can go first, Moses.
Okay, thank you very much, Godly, for this opportunity and for Becca Africa for bringing this together. And by the way, I love the introduction of Becca Africa. I love that video. Uh, it's one of those things that also relieve a setting from tension.
Mm,
Um, so from that angle, I want to say for me, a conversation uh, becomes difficult when the people have no trust within themselves. And I'll be
mm,
talking from the angle of peace building practice. In 2021, I was in Ondo State, where I grew up uh, in Nigeria. For those who don't know, I'm from Nigeria. And I realized that there was a conflict. I think at that time we have issues. The committee had an issue of trying to select new king, but
mm,
also we only went there thinking we were just want to do this assessment for peace and development related issues. And we know that exists. I mean, the problem exists, but we never knew that it was causing an issue within the community. We just believe that possibly they are already handling it. And because at that time we were not in that place. So we had that, we brought people together. The first day we brought students together, we trained them on peace and peace education, bullying, anti-bullying, and all that. So the second day was the day we brought people together for uh, community engagement, and in that engagement, we realized that there are underlying issues. You know, you're bringing some people to be your people on the high table, and some of them religious leaders, community leaders, security leaders, and you now discover that the people on ground, the participants, some of them are pointing fingers to those people on other
mm,
issues that we did not have plans for. Uh, that day, my mediation skills was tested. And you know,
mm.
sometimes you think you are brilliant or you are doing well, maybe because you have a degree and you have done a lot of trainings. But when you are doing it on ground, that is when you know that this is not joke.
Right.
So there was a land grabbing issue by the state governor at that time. I was not even in the know of that. And we've done a lot of needs assessments, so to say. Um, and we discovered that the community people, most of them were raising that issue, and they
Mm,
were accusing somebody on the panel, on the high table, so to say, that this man was part of the people that connive with the governor to sell some of our lands. And at that point, you're a moderator, and the tension was rising. So at that point, what I had to do is to first drag them off people to the issues.
mm,
So I tried to let them know, oh, what are the issues? Oh, land issues then. Who owns the land? Then I began to ask questions. We began to ask questions even at that spot. Now, so for me, it can come in different ways. For peace project, that is an example. When people are not willing to listen, and there are
mm,
some times when people are not, especially in an uneducated balance. I mean, where people are, we have uneducated majority about peace building, about active listening. Now
right.
you have the knowledge, you know what you know, but the other persons are not aware of even themselves talk of issues around active listening and
Right.
effective
Right.
communication. So at that point, one of the things, especially when you are dealing with people like that that want to dominate a conversation, that doesn't understand the angle of, oh, listening to understand and not to respond and all that. If you're dealing with people of that kind, you must also be very, very patient. You must understand the context. You must not be so quick to say, oh, why are you responding like this? You should do this, you should do this. No, you should understand that there's a limit to what knowledge they have. And with your understanding of the context, you must be very, very patient, one. And in some cases, you might have to ignore their delinquencies. You might have to just be so do you know what sometimes even when you are so calm and looking professional, it can be a problem to some people. So you must just be very, very conscious of your context, do a lot of dynamics in your mind. And when I see difficult conversation or a tension going on and the atmosphere is becoming unbearable for all parties, most times I would just call for a break, as a
Right.
mediator most times. Depending on the kind of contest or the kind of engagement I'm up to. So sometimes when people are hungry, I mean, if the question is personal to me, which I think it is, difficult conversation most times also come from contradictory goals, contradictory interests, incompatible goals, incompatible needs. My brother and I, few minutes to this call, I posted something on my WhatsApp status about I don't know if you know this. Mehdi Hassan is a journalist. Uh, I think with Al Jazeera, tackling one of the professors around one of the British professors around slavery and all that. So he was not in support of Mendy. I was. I'm not totally in support of Mendy, but in that particular conversation, Mendy was right about the questioning, but he was now talking about other things that he doesn't agree with. So one of the
Right.
things that in that conversation, I know his capacity. I know he's very brilliant too. I understand that we can actually talk it out. Then I started by asking him some questions. Then he was
Mm.
trying to answer those questions. And from that angle, we were able to understand several things without agreeing. We did not agree. But
Mm.
we learned so much from the space of like 30 to 1 hour before this call. Now, just talking around, he was bringing in history, archaeology, and all that. And we learned a lot. If it were to be someone else that I know that is not capable or he just want to speak, some people just want to make comments.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to ignore search. Sometimes you might have to avoid. Sometimes you might have to strategically withdraw. If you know that, you know. But it's important when you see that a conversations has incompatible goals, incompatible interests, is about incompatible needs and clash of
Right.
a lot of things. You you are very conscious of who is talking first. You understand the context first before you now act properly. Because the major essence of talking is not to just talk or to win an argument. It's for you to even learn in the process,
Right.
and that all matters when you are dealing with difficult conversation. And
Right.
we come to that around it's very important for us to have discussions, to have difficult conversations. It makes us become better. It makes us, and we must. It also helps us. It's something that we must change how we see conversations as a learning point, as a conflict itself is something that should build us and not destroy us. If we
Right.
understand the innate nature and the originality that comes from we being a conflicting being as a person. So I think I will stop there in
Mm.
case so that I will also hear from others.
Thank you
From
so much for your input. And I want to welcome our viewers that have joined. Thank you for joining, and please feel free to ask your questions in the chat, and I would look at them and then post them to our speakers. And so I want to turn it over to Paul as well. The same question goes for you. What makes a conversation difficult for you? But before you come in, I just want to mention I think it's really beautiful to hear from my perspective, the power of just listening, right? Because a lot of the times conversation becomes difficult when you don't feel or you don't sense that the other person is listening to you. And I think Moses, that's one thing that I took from your input. So thank you for that. Okay, Paul, over to you. What makes a conversation difficult for you and why? Hi, unfortunately, I cannot hear you. Maybe you can turn your mic? Yes.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes, thank you very much for this. And it's nice to say your contribution as well. So I'm saying that the you, if it's you, me, or you, everyone, then I can contribute on both sides. If that makes sense. Yeah, I
I'm
believe.
sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, you're saying that what makes the conversation difficult for me or for anyone. Am I right?
Yes, but you can personalize it.
Good, thank you very much. So, in the first place, I'm very much aware that we human beings are so complex. You know, we made in diverse ways and all that. So, if I can just borrow from my um, other presenters' submission, just a word, context. You know, context is very crucial when it comes to having conversations, especially difficult ones for that matter. Because
Mm,
humans, as we are talking about complexities, we are also different. We are so well. I'm a twin. And I love twins. I love being a twin. I've never regretted a day. I wish I can have opportunity to give birth to 10 twins or even more. I know my wife will not be able to manage that. But even let me just go to the very basics. I grew up as a twin. Right from the womb, I had a partner and we were born together. The same day we grew up together. We are so different, like really, really different. I believe maybe that's growing up with my twin brother was an opportunity or platform that God gave me to be able to learn and manage conversations, especially difficult ones, because we are both wired differently. We are born on the same day, same date, and same age, but different wiring and different makeup. And
mm,
so being aware of your context in having difficult conversations is more or less like having over 50% of the success in that conversation, if that makes sense.
right.
Because being aware of the context means that you have to put yourself in the person's shoe, if that is the word they normally use. You know, imagine like if I'm talking to you this morning and I am not aware that you even have a headache before waking up, and prior to that headache, you had an intense argument last night with someone that you really love or that loves you, and all that.
Mm,
So you wrestling with that, you woke up with a headache, and now we have a meeting, and I'm like, if I would have been intentional to know much about the context in that sense to say like, hey sister, how was your night?
mm,
Are you getting it? So I've already
right.
created a platform or a platform, a good listening platform, which will give a certain level of trust and confidence. Say, well, like, let me open up. My night was really not good. And like maybe a follow-up question. What went wrong that your night was not good? So I'm
Mm,
already putting myself in your context for a good conversation. But
right.
if I don't have that patience, that discerning, that wisdom to say, look, can I try to enter into your world to know your context before we have a conversation, then I'm
Mm,
starting on a very wrong premise. So like, oh, why are you late for this meeting? That's already a very wrong way to start a conversation, which
mhm,
already the background is already a difficult one, you know, to start with. And now I'm starting on a very wrong premise, not trying to understand context and all that, you know. So context is very key. We have to understand context. We also have to be very much aware that we are so wired differently, so that
mm,
with those kind of background information, it positions us in a very nice place to have a good conversation. Other
mm,
than that, if we are not very much aware of context, we are not very much conscious of the complexities with
mhm,
humanity or with human beings, then we definitely gonna have a difficult conversation. If you look,
mm,
I would assure you, I've not done a thorough research, but I want to believe that 98% of the conflicts across the world are hinged on conversation. Yes, you'll be surprised. Maybe this country said
Mm,
this thing, and this person didn't understand it very well. They didn't try to know what was the context within which it was said. Then
mhm.
there's a spark up. There's a trouble.
Right.
Even in marriage, I'm a married man. I'm happily married for the past 11 years plus. And it's amazing. Like, I love my wife, but like every day I have to be very intentional to try to understand her. But there are times to say things I really misunderstand her completely. And if care is not taken, I get angry, I lose it, and all that. That
Mm,
with that intentionality, say like, hey, we are both wired differently. We are married, yes, and all that, but we are different. So,
right.
what was the context within which you are bringing that conversation for us to have? You know,
Mm,
yeah, so that's very important. And for example, from an ADR perspective, we have what we call the pulse frame for conversation. And I would not want to say it's a formula, it's more or less like a model, which I believe can be contextualized heavily to become relevant, if that makes sense. And then the pulse, which is more or less like an acronym for prepare, uncover, learn, search, and explain, and all that explore. And other people will say that you can use it like it's actually like people using languages skillfully and effectively. So can you imagine, like we having this conversation, I am very careful to know that in a conversation, language matters.
right.
What tone do I speak with, or what kind of language am I communicating with you? Is it language that is very much understanding in your context? If
Mm,
yes, praise the Lord, and we move that way. Then try to use it, not only having the language, you can have all the rhetoric skills and all that, but they don't know how to communicate it effectively.
right.
They don't use it very well. That's why we have people who are like great speakers, but when they open their mouth and speak, trouble is falling just knocking next door. Using it in a skillful way. You know,
Right.
there are skillful ways you go about doing things. For example, you see a craftsman doing applying all his skills to craft a chair or a table. In its normal form, it's like a wood, but by the time it's done with the
Mhm.
wood, that would have become a table. So imagine using language in a very skillful way to communicate to your audience. For example, excuse me, can you hear me? So
Yes.
I'm just wrapping up. I'm wrapping up. So like for example, in the Ghanaian context,
Mm,
um, you can't just be forward or direct to people. So if you want to say something that can be offensive or that might be offensive or that will be offensive, you first of all like send a warning shot, use a steady flash, meaning that pardon me or excuse me for whatever I'm going to say to you. If it might offend you on the way, please forgive me in advance. Does that make sense? So that's
yes.
like a skillful way of using language to avoid confusion, to avoid conflict, and even in a very difficult setting. But how about like me coming from somewhere and I don't know Ghanaian context very well, and I'm just like, I'm talking to a group of Ghanaians like, oh, you Ghanaians are rude, you Ghanaians are this, you
Mm,
Ghanaians are that. It's like a turn off and it will cause a lot of confusion and it becomes very difficult to continue with whatever conversation you want to start from there. But what if I do a background check, have a very good understanding of the Ghanaian context, knowing that most Ghanaians are not really like direct or forward in
mm,
conversation. So I have to be careful and learn. Really, I know how you communicate in Ghana in a straightforward way. And someone like,
mm,
oh, you said it's a flat rate, you're talking to especially elderly people before you say anything strong, any strong word, you know. So yeah, basically that's it. So we have to be aware of our context, complexities of human beings, and apply the pulse frame for conversation. That can be of help,
mhm.
especially in difficult situations.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for your input. That's so true. I'm really grateful that you mentioned because context plays a big role, as you have mentioned, right? And if you don't know, and going back to what Moses says, first of all, the capacity of people or the person that you're having a conversation with, if they're able to have the conversation with you or not, you don't know the context in which they're where they're coming from, and so being able to be aware of that, I think matters a lot. So thank you so much, Paul, for that. And welcome to our viewers that are coming in. Please feel free to ask some questions in the chat, and I would post them to our speakers. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. How Does your emotions influence the way you communicate during conflict? This is my favorite. I'm going to go back to Moses for this question. How does your emotions influence the way you communicate during conflict? Over to you.
Thank you very much. Please, in case my device goes off, I'll be switching device. So in case it happens, also that's one of the things we are we are learning here. In cases, so just like Paul mentioned, when you in situations that are a bit difficult, you might have to just tell the people ahead what you're about
Right.
to. And I learned from that too. About Ghanaians. I have a lot of Ghanaian friends, and when I moderate event, I think there was a particular event I moderated. That's West African Peace and Security Dialogue. So, and I talked about. I welcome my friend from Ghana to the podium, and in that conversation, so I talk about the Ghana Jollof thing, the Nigeria Ghana Jollof thing, and everybody's my. I do moderate events here and there, and
Okay.
and that really sparked a lot of conversation afterwards. I think that went well, but in some cases, if you're not careful,
Right.
it might go south. So, and that is
Right.
why you must be careful of the kind of language and tone and the kind of um, jokes you make, the way you speak too, which sometimes, sometimes our comedians might be insensitive, while trying to make people smile and all that. So, but back to the question on our emotions come into play when we are having difficult conversation. Issues around fear and anger can be a major thing. Um, I polarize emotions into two major categories. Fear is on one side, and if you're is either you're fearful or you're an angry person. But most times it can be mixed in between. You can be other things in between. But in essence, sometimes physical situations can trigger um, your innate emotions. It was at a point I discovered that when I'm hungry, when I'm very very hungry, I became angry. And I think there's a saying that says an angry man is an hungry man is an angry man. Maybe I think there
Right.
was that saying. Yeah. Um, Sometimes you just discover that your pitch is getting higher, and you just need to ask yourself, and you do a quick scan within yourself. What is actually the cause of this? Even while I teach a lot of I do a lot of capacity building program. Most times when I don't eat before starting those sessions, I just discover that my tone becomes higher. My pitch goes higher, and the bass doesn't come out like that. It's more of a soprano thing, and it might have an impact on your engagement. So
Mm.
sometimes you might have to question yourself or ask yourself some questions. What was actually the issue? Why am I fearful? Ask yourself those questions. Why am I talking this way? And that also goes well into your self-awareness engagement. And sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
just have to breathe. So if I discover some inordinate emotions interfering with my engagement and all that, sometimes I might just take a break. I might just tell myself, "Oh, Moses, go and eat first. Eat, be okay, take water." Sometimes there's a connection between our health and our
Mm.
delivery and our psychology, how we deliver things. Like currently now, I've not eaten, maybe, but I think I'm not sounding bad.
Mm.
so, but in essence, one must be able to ensure that you pay attention to yourself, to regulate yourself. In peace building, when we are doing trainings at my own organization, we do a lot around breathing. We do a lot of breathing exercises at PepNet. We do a lot of
Mm.
breathing exercises for several reasons. One, to reduce pressure. There's a lot of pressure in Nigeria. I don't know. I think you Ghanaians are enjoying it a lot. We are expressing a lot of So when you're training people here in Nigeria,
Mm,
you must be conscious of that. You must allow them
mm,
to even um, drop those pressure by breathing, by doing some other things, by even bringing them into some entertaining
right,
icebreakers.
right. I know, I think we lost him for a second. Who's this? Okay, let's give him a few. Hello?
Hello. So sorry about
Hi,
the.
that's
Yeah.
okay. Did you switch?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
Um,
all right.
so let me just wrap up on that. As I
Yes,
was
please.
saying, emotions are very, very instrumental to how we behave, our actions, our attitude, our delivery, our disposition. And that's why we
Mm,
must be able to gauge it. We must be
right.
conscious of how we'll operate with our emotions. And that happen most times. I advise that you don't get hungry before you eat. If you have a if you have a negotiation meeting, or you have a meeting that you know that you might have difficult conversation, eat well,
Right.
drink well, be healthy, sleep well too. Do
Mm,
all these other things as much as possible. Most times, I'm talking from my own experience now.
mm-hmm.
If I know that I'll be having a very tense meeting or a difficult conversation kind of meeting, most of I take care of my health first. I deal with those
Right.
things first. Then I prepare my mind. I manage my expectations
Mm,
and ensure that when it comes to managing expectations, it's very important, because if you expect too much, you'll be disappointed if those things are not met. So
mm,
when you are going on such conversations that you know that there are possibilities that might happen, there are things that might not happen,
right.
you already put yourself, you do what I call, or what is called, is not me, what is called scenario building. So you design a scenario in your mind, or you write it out. You do a
Mm-hmm.
risk analysis. So for
Mm-hmm.
scenario building, you try to think ahead. What is the possible outcome, the best possible
Right.
outcome in this
Right.
conversation? What would be the mid case scenario, or the mid possible outcome? That is,
Mm-hmm.
will it remain on the status quo? What will be the worst case scenario? So most times when I
Yes.
go on a negotiation, I go with worst case scenario while I hope for best outcomes. But I
Right.
go with worst case so that I will not be agitated too much. And
Mm-hmm.
when the other thing happen, and this also can be done for me, you can always do this even for applications when I'm applying for something, or you are doing something, so that the odds that come with rejection will not
Mm,
consume you too much. So
right.
when you have those projections, you do your risk analysis. What will you lose? What will you gain if this happen? So when
Mm-hmm.
I'm going out on any negotiation, by God's grace, I teach a lot of people around here on negotiation, and I'll do a lot of negotiation here. And so, so sometimes, while a lot of people think that I always get my way in most
Mm,
negotiation, it's not always like that. It's just that when I have done those projections, at least I will still go with something. And
right.
I'm not going there because I must win, I must win, I must win. So the mentality of I must win most times damage our expectations. I mean,
Mm,
and when you're disappointed, it causes conflict. Disappointment. So
right.
I just say that expectation that are not managed give birth to
Mm,
disappointment. Disappointment give birth to disagreement. Disagreement give birth to other damages that you might have. And you must tame it.
mm,
So, as a conflict manager, or even as somebody who is interested in peace building, you must be proactive instead of being reactive. So you are
right.
prepared for every day. You're prepared for what if this happened. So you have those analysis done within you. Or for me, myself, most times I already have the way I project it in my mind. But for imagine negotiators, or scholars, always you can pen it down, do what you need to do, regulate yourself at first. And in some cases, it will not. It there are still some situations that will be worse than your worst case scenario. So in most
Right.
cases like that, you breathe in, breathe out. If possible, do your um inner regulation thing, and if possible,
Mm-hmm.
you can strategically withdraw from those
Right.
situations. I have
Right.
been negotiating with someone. I mean, in a meeting, and it was so tense that I know that he is already transferring anger into me. I could really feel that my
Mm.
hand was already, I'm already vibrating, and I want to say some things that I might regret at the end of the day. And I just say, oh, you know what? Um, I need to use the restroom. I'll be back.
Right. Right. Right.
Actually, so which also go into what we call conflict management strategies. That's the second one, which is strategic withdrawal. The first one, which is avoidance, which most times
Mm-hmm.
I don't really encourage people to avoid conflict,
Right.
except if you don't value that relationship. And but this
Right.
second one is a very good tool if you analyze the power dynamics, you analyze the context, the atmosphere, the tone. You can strategically withdraw and you can come back. And there's times people say, I mean, which I don't do most times, but I also do it depending on the situation, like internalized counting of 1 to 10 and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
most times, in some cases, you'll be tempted to just open your mouth and say something. So most times, just take time off and come back. And you discover
Right.
that the time you've gone out to do something, other ideas might even come while you're easing yourself off or while you are resting within that minute. So I'll just stop there um,
Mm-hmm.
for now and
Thank
hope
you
to
so
hear from
much.
Paul.
Wow, that was beautiful. We got a comment from Mr. James Alugo. I'm sorry, it's so hard for me to pronounce your last name. But your response was really beautiful. You said, in good conversation, there should be good listening with careful and logical responses. I love that. That's really true. That's really true because majority of the time we lose track of the fact that we're supposed to listen and hear, and not necessarily want to respond the minute we're in the conversation. So thank you so much for your input, James, and thank you so much, Moses, as well. I've learned so much already. I think something that made me think listening to you was when you mentioned about the fear, uh, because I can attest to that and to say that the emotion of fear is could be a very very big driving force in making conversations very difficult, because the fear of like, oh, what if the person does not understand me, what if they did not really hear me. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. Something else that I picked up in regards to the breathing techniques, I can say that I agree that it helps so much when we're heightened in emotion and we take the time to either walk out of the room to get a breather or to just take a deep breath to calm the nervous system. Uh, I think that, based on also on my experiences and the teachings that I've done, I have realized that it also really helps to calm and to center. So thank you so much, Moses, for your input. We're gonna move on to another question, which is also in alignment with the first one, and I'm gonna pose that to Paul. What strategies help you to stay calm and grounded in tense moments, in hard conversations and conflict? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I believe Moses have thrown light into some crucial points. Um, because strategic withdrawal, I would call it tactical withdrawal for my side as well. That's what I call it. You know, yeah, because first of all, you have to be self-aware. We're in
Mm,
digital age when we talk about AI, artificial intelligence. But I believe you have to be very much intentional, to be emotionally intelligent.
Right.
Yeah, because there is a whole side of our emotions that is crucial in our daily dealings with people. We are relational beings. We are emotional beings.
Mm.
In our human ecosystem, communication is like the lifeline, and I would say that's the
Mhm.
oxygen. When you want to have a conversation, your emotions have to be intact, in check.
Right.
So this self-awareness is so crucial. If you don't know yourself, how would you know other people? If you don't know yourself, how will you be in a better position to know other people or to be able to even understand people? So
Right.
self-awareness is also an aspect of emotional intelligence. It's very crucial
Mm.
in handling difficult situations. You know, I know myself. I know issues that I struggle with. I know my threshold, how far I can withstand things and all that. So I am very much aware about my surrounding, aware about myself, about people that I'm talking to. If I see that I find myself in a situation where I'm about to lose it, I do what they call tactical withdrawal. I don't believe in avoidance because
Right.
somebody say that they say the I like using a lot of biblical examples for certain reasons. Yeah. Somebody say like the snake that was avoided in the garden became a dragon in Revelation. So from Genesis to Revelation. Yeah, yeah, can you imagine? And maybe a stick you can manage to kill a snake depending on the size. But
Right.
no matter how big a stick is, you can't kill a dragon with a stick. So if you avoid dealing with tough issues, trust me, they will go and become so strong. Maybe the next time they will meet you, they will knock you out. So
Right.
I believe in tactical withdrawal, like just withdraw for a moment, like what my dear brother just said, like, oh, can I use the bathroom, please? But if situations are becoming tense and almost out of control, I believe tactical withdrawal is crucial. Then secondly, you can also apply empathy, if that makes sense. Trying
Yeah.
to be just putting yourself in that person's position and try to understand what that person is going through and all that. For example, you've been in a conversation with somebody, all of a sudden they're tearing up, and it's difficult. In our context, in Africa, especially, we say men don't cry in public. I've been in
Mm.
situations where a lot of men cry. I do cry as well. I believe most important historical figures have cried in public. Even one of the shortest verses in the Bible is it John 11:35. This Jesus wept. So Christ
That's what.
wept.
Mhm.
Who are you not to cry and all that kind of thing.
Right.
So we have to be empathetic. Try to move with the flow, if I can put it
Right.
that way. So I try to first of all very much aware of myself and the people I'm dealing with.
Mhm.
Try to also
Mhm.
try to put myself in their position and sometimes withdraw when necessary and bounce back
Right.
stronger. Because
Yeah.
sometimes withdrawal can give you the opportunity to be able to recalibrate, if that's what
Mm.
we call it, or maybe reset, which is very common language like that. And
Right.
yeah, so and yeah, and I love the submission of Moses as well. That
Mhm.
counting, that breathing. In fact, when he said the breathing, I was just smiling because growing up we experienced that. My father was a very hardworking man. He used to be a hardworking man. But that breathing therapy, we used to make
Mhm.
fun out of it. Like, you said breathe in and out, breathe in. So, and we were like, Dad, what's this? And all that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But now that we are of age, we understand how crucial and vital that breathing exercise is. It helps. Just
Mm.
one side can take one big load, maybe that can even damage your entire career if you lose
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Why not
Mhm.
just patiently take a breathing, space back and bounce back, if that makes sense. So yeah,
Right.
it's sometimes the reality is that there are times in fact when reality really hits, you might be in a position not to even be able to do anything
Mhm.
beyond you. And I have this philosophy of like it's more like a wall I've built around myself over the years, which is really helping me because the kind of work I do is really difficult dealing with
Mm.
people from diverse backgrounds here in 147 plus countries. And we have over 120 nationalities across the world that we work with,
Wow.
over 5,000 staff. So just picture that. So people from different backgrounds and all that. So you have to be naturally intelligent. In fact, in our
Mm.
organization, we are very intentional. We call it, we have a whole program we take people through. culture and youth, CQ. It's a whole program. It's a must. You are part of an organization, you have to go to that program. Why? So that you understand yourself, understand
Mm,
people culture, so that you're able to adjust and acclimatize wherever you are. Because we are in diverse communities and all that. How do you navigate among
right.
people with those kind of
Yeah.
situations? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes difficult, but that's the reality. And my philosophy, if I submit, if I conclude, is that I don't have any much expectations for people and even life.
Mm,
I if people behave untoward, I just take it like it's a normal thing because we are humans. Humans can always fail and will always fail. But if people do the right thing, it comes to me as a surprise. So that lower down my expectation, if that makes sense. So
mm,
when people do the right thing, I'm like, wow, that's good. When they do the wrong thing, well, I'm not surprised. You're a human being. And that
right.
helps me as well. A lot in life, not expecting much from people, don't get disappointed and all that, and stuff. So basically, these are some of the approach I use when it comes to dealing with emotions and navigating around that through difficult conversations. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. I think it's really important to have self-awareness, awareness of ourselves and also of the other people in the environment. And just to piggyback off of that, I was in the Philippines 3 days ago, and I was there for 3 months, but I had to learn the context of the country and how the people operate. And I went to work in a rehab center, and my client is schizophrenic. Before I came in, when there's a conflict in the center, he would blow up and hit people, and it would be very chaotic. And so, he learned, in my time with him, that it is okay to say, you know what, I'm feeling really activated right now, and I would like to step away for a second to calm myself. When I'm ready, I will come back into the conversation. And this man was able to do that and practice that. And there has been a drastic change in his relationships, even in how he deals with hard conversations, because he has learned that it is okay to stop, to take a second to step away, and to come back when you're centered. And so I think it's really important to have the self awareness of, in this moment, I don't have the capacity to deal with this conflict in this moment. So thank you so much for that, Paul. I appreciate it. Okay, where time is running really fast, but we have two more questions that I would like to run through. I'm going to pose that to Moses. How can two people work together to find fair and realistic solutions during conflict?
Thank you very much, Godly. Um, how do two people find fair, right? Fairness, right?
Yes, yes.
And can you hand the question? I think, can you repeat
So
the other part of the question?
yes. So the question is that how can two people work together to find a fair and realistic solution during a conflict?
Okay. So, in peace building parlance, we call it joint problem solving
Mm,
under conflict management strategies. And joint problem solving means that the two people are looking out for a solution. But in some
mm,
cases, it's not always like that in reality.
right,
Most times, somebody might not even be interested in the conflict in the first place. And
right.
so, the first thing is to define what the conflict is all about, to know what exactly is the problem. And in, either from the side you're from, you should be able to ask a lot of whys. So, I came up with something maybe 2020 or 2021. I call it the theory of five whys.
Okay.
And the theory, I've not really worked on it like that since then, but I've used it in conversations like this or in trainings. I've used it a lot in trainings. The
Mm,
theory is saying that you should ask at least five whys to get to the root cause of the problem. Now, if you, of any conflict now, if somebody is saying, oh, I'm having problem with you because you are not hearing me. So the question you should ask yourself, or you should ask the other person, is why? Why is this person not hearing you? What is the issue? Then if you answer that issue, ask another why. So ask it until you get to five. Then maybe you'll be closer to the root cause of the problem. Because if you don't get to the root cause, you might not be able to solve the conflict or the problem.
Right.
So that is that. So when it comes to fairness, most times you also go. Please give me 30 seconds. There's an intrusion into my. Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Yes. So, um, the basic thing under joint problem solving, which is also in my book, I thought effective communication is the ground rule, more of like
Mm,
everything in transforming any conflict. Um, if we can engage well in effective communication, meaning communication without assumption, communication that is very clear, communication that is direct, that everybody is aware of what the situation is. It might be difficult for us, it might be easy for us to settle or to agree in the long term. So, effective
mm,
communication should be a core value in actually engaging this. And effective communication means active listening to, like we
right.
discussed, because most times, just like Paul mentioned, I think, in one of his responses, that when people don't listen, I think you were the one saying it. When people don't listen, then there can be a lot of things that can come into play at the end of the day. So when two
Right.
people are, first is for them to even speak without preempting the other,
Mm,
without thinking for the other, without um, interjecting the other, just listening to understand and not to respond. The
right.
other thing is that if they are unable to still have clear communication, they can go into dialogue, which is them getting deeper into the conversation. And after that, possibly if it's not also, then they get into negotiation. And negotiation is with the mindset that we are not here to win. We are here to. It's not like I win, the other lose. It's we want to find a common ground.
Right.
What is happening? I want to
Right.
move from our positions and treat them well enough that everybody gets something out of it. And
Mm,
most times, and I've discussed the principles of negotiation, which has to do with one, separating the people from the issue and focusing more on the issue, like what I did in that story I told you.
right.
The first thing is to be able to separate what are the issues, then drive the attention of either the conflicting parties from that to um, the issues on ground. What are the issues? Land grabbing. What are the issues? Um, we are not communicating properly.
Right.
Um, at that time, you are separating. You are just distilling what are the issues, not you now, but there is miscommunication. You understand? So you try
Yeah.
to bring those parties to that point, and in some cases, you bring what we call objective criteria. Objective criteria are facts beyond all parties. Now, if we are having a disagreement now, like my brother and I, um, I'm bringing fact. I ask him a question. Can you give me an example of where this person agreed to Arab slavery? Can you give me a video? So, such documents, such facts are objective because both of us, we are not in the video. So we
Mm-hmm.
are not the creator of the video. So sometimes you bring those objective criterion to set some major standards that are
Right.
either universally acceptable. Sometimes you just say Google it. A lot of people used to know my kind of debates then, because those times I used to do a lot of debate. By the way, I can pride myself as one of the best debaters of all time in my
Wow.
school
I don't
years.
doubt it. I don't doubt it.
So, but even at that, one must be careful not to be so concerned about winning.
mm,
So in
right.
peace building, and what I will end with is that when you are
Yes.
going into any negotiation or anything that might lead to an outcome of either compromise, accommodation, competition, whatever thing that is the outcome of that input, you must be careful that your concern is not to win or to be
Mm,
right. Your
right.
purpose should be relationship building. After this conversation, are we still going to be friends?
Right.
After this discussion, are we still going to see ourselves again and say, oh, I will not feel bad about you, but I'll feel
Right.
like, oh, I learned a lot in our conversation. Can we do this another time? So that is what I've learned over my days of debating and dialoguing, because most times, and that's what we need to start teaching young people. And I put it also
That's
in my book. We need to start teaching young people not to be so concerned about being right, but
mm,
concerned about getting the fat out and building relationship, which is the most essence of ADR in the
yes.
races. Let me stop here.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I've learned so much just by listening to you both, Moses and Paul, and it has been such an honor and a pleasure. Unfortunately, our time is up, but I just want to read from Mr. James. He mentioned over here in the comment. Let me put it on stage. Okay, he said the two people should be aiming to work towards win-win solutions, accepting willingness to resolve the dispute without blame game, readiness to apologize and to overlook others' weaknesses so as to move ahead. Thank you so much for your comment and your response, James. I appreciate it.
Go- Godly, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So that's James A. Olugbowumi, one of our PepNet, PEMAT participant in one of our
Oh,
programs. So some of
oh
our
wow.
people are joining from Nigeria. I posted it on our platform. So thank you. And I'm just
Oh,
thanking them for joining in.
wow. Yes, welcome and thank you so much. Thank you all for joining today. So, to close, I first of all want to say a big thank you once again to honestly the speakers. You guys have really poured out your heart, your knowledge. I've learned so much, and I'm sure so many people will benefit from the insights that you brought to our conversation today. And to our audience, I also want to say a big thank you for joining us for the Africa Youth Leadership webinar series. We hope that today's session has been both insightful and valuable to you. So, to learn more about us and to stay updated on future events, please visit the Burka Africa website. You can find more information about Burka Africa's growth partners and initiatives at www.berkaafrica.com. You may also reach us via WhatsApp at +233 55 320 0484, and also follow us on all our social media platforms. The links will be there on your screen. Thank you all for being part of this important conversation. And please go on to engage confidently and lead with empathy, as that has been mentioned many times during our conversation. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexander, and thank you,
You're
Moses.
very
It's a pleasure connecting here.
Thank you so
welcome. All
much,
right.
Paul. I think we have so much to do together. Bye.
Goodbye.
Yeah,
Bye.
that was just my thing. Yeah, we'll connect here.
Bye.
As the corporate sector evolves, Burka Africa remains committed to cultivating world-class thought leaders and providing innovative, human-centered solutions that shape a prosperous future for African governments and businesses. About Burka Africa. Burka Africa is a platform that houses expert consultants from across the African sub-region that provide strategic sustainable leadership, organizational development, corporate governance, coaching, and ESG advisory services to businesses and African governments. Burka's strategic thrust is to strengthen strategic alignment for Africa's development by bridging the gap between governments, businesses, and industry experts for leadership and business solutions, serving as a center for excellence and transformative leadership insights in Africa. The consortium is dedicated to shaping ethical, visionary, productive, and sustainable businesses and leadership across Africa. Through advisory, training, and coaching, Burka supports executives, managers, and organizations in achieving excellence, growth, and sustainable impact. Visit our website www.burkafrica.com for more information.